San Juan v. Civil Service Commission. Facts: the position of Provincial Budget Officer for Rizal Province was left vacated. Petitioner, Gov. Reynaldo San Juan informed Dir Reynaldo Abella of the DBM that Ms. Delice Santos assumed office as acting PBO and requested Dir Abella to endorse the appointment of Santos. In a memo, however, Dir Abella appointed Cecilia Almajose as PBO of Rizal on the basis of a comparative study of all municipal budget officers. According to Abella, Almajose was most qualified as she was a CPA. DBM Undersecretary Nazario Cabuquit signed the appointment papers of Almajose. In a letter, petitioner reiterated his request for Santos' appointment. DBM Regional Dir Agripino Galvez denied the request as Santos was not qualified. When petitioner learned of Almajos's appointment, he protested on the grounds that Cabuquit as DBM Undersecretary is not legally authorized to appoint the PBO. That Almajose lacks the required 3 years work experience as provided in Local Budget Circular No. 31, and that under EO 112, it is the governor, not the regional director or a congressman, who has the power to recommend nominees for the position of PBO. The DBM issued a memo ruling that petitioner's protest is not meritorious as the DBM validly exercised its prerogative in filling up the contested position since none of the petitioner's nominees met the prescribed requirements. The CSC affirmed, Issue 1. Petitioner has the right and privilege to recommend the nominees to the position of PBO. Held yes ratio. The tug-of-war between the Secretary of DBM and the Governor of Rizal over a position involves the application of a most important constitutional policy and principle, that of local autonomy. We have to obey the clear mandate on local autonomy. Where a law is capable of two interpretations, one in favor of centralized power in Malacanang and the other beneficial to local autonomy, the scales must be weighed in favor of autonomy. The exercise by LGUs of meaningful power has been a national goal since the turn of the century. And yet, in spite of constitutional provisions and legislation mandating greater autonomy for local officials, national officers cannot seem to let go of centralized powers. They deny or water down what little grants of autonomy have so far been given to municipal corporations. President McKinley's instructions to the Second Philippine Commission ordered the new government to devote their attention in the first instance to the establishment of municipal governments in which natives of the islands, both in the cities and rural communities, shall be afforded the opportunity to manage their own local officers to the fullest extent of which they are capable and subject to the least degree of supervision and control which a careful study of their capacities and observation of the workings of native control show to be consistent with the maintenance of law, order, and loyalty. In this initial organic act for the Philippines, the Commission, which combined both executive and legislative powers, was directed to give top priority to making local autonomy effective. The 1935 Constitution had no specific article on local autonomy. However, the Constitution clearly limited the executive power over local governments to general supervision as may be provided by law. The President controls the executive departments. He has no such power over local governments. He has only supervision, and that is both general and circumscribed by statute. Pursuant to this principle, under the 1935 Constitution, legislation implementing local autonomy was enacted. In 1959, Republic Act No. 2264 was enacted. The provisions of the 1973 Constitution moved the country further towards greater autonomy. An entire article on local government was incorporated into the Constitution. It called for a local government code defining more responsive and accountable local government structures. Any creation, merger, abolition, or substantial boundary alteration cannot be done except in accordance with the local government code and upon approval by a plebiscite. The power to create sources of revenue and to levy taxes was specifically settled upon local governments. The exercise of greater local autonomy is even more marked in the present constitution. When the Civil Service Commission interpreted the recommending power of the provincial governor as purely directory, it went against the letter and spirit of the constitutional provisions on local autonomy. If the DBM secretary jealously hoards the entirety of budgetary powers and ignores the right of local governments to develop self-reliance and resoluteness in the handling of their own funds, the goal of meaningful local autonomy is frustrated and set back. Provincial and municipal budgets are prepared at the local level and after completion are forwarded to the national officials for review. They are prepared by the local officials who must work within the constraints of those budgets. They are not formulated in the inner sanctums of an all-knowing DBM and unilaterally imposed on local governments whether or not they are relevant to local needs and resources. It is for this reason that there should be a genuine interplay, a balancing of viewpoints, and a harmonization of proposals from both the local and national officials. It is for this reason that the nomination and appointment process involves a sharing of power between the two levels of government. It may not be amiss to give by way of analogy the procedure followed in the appointments of justices and judges. Under Article 8 of the Constitution, nominations for judicial positions are made by the Judicial and Bar Council. DBM's grave abuse of discretion is aggravated by the fact that Dir Galvez required the governor to submit at least 3 other names of nominees better qualified than his earlier recommendation. The appointment of Alma Jose was formalized before the governor was extended the courtesy of being informed that his nominee had been rejected. The complete disregard of the LGU's prerogative and the smug belief that the DBM has absolute wisdom, authority, and discretion are manifest. In his work, Dean Vicente G. Cinco stated that the value of LGUs as institutions of democracy is measured by the degree of autonomy that they enjoy. He stated that local assemblies of citizens constitute the strength of free nations. A people may establish a system of free government, but without the spirit of municipal institutions, it cannot have the spirit of liberty. Our national officials should not only comply with the constitutional provisions on local autonomy but should also appreciate the spirit of liberty upon which these provisions are based. Gonzan v. Court of Appeals, Supra. Held the 1987 Constitution did not divest the President of the power of supervision over LGUs. The change in the constitutional language merely underscores local government's autonomy from Congress and to break Congress's control over local government affairs. The Constitution did not, however, intend, for the sake of local autonomy, to deprive the legislature of all authority over municipal corporations, in particular, concerning discipline. Autonomy does not contemplate making many states out of local government units, as in the federal governments of the U.S. Autonomy, in the constitutional sense, is subject to the guiding star, though not control, of the legislature. Albeit the legislative responsibility under the Constitution and as the supervision clause itself suggests is to wean local LGUs from overdependence on the central government. Under the Constitution, local autonomy is not instantly self-executing, but subject to, among other things, the passage of a local government code, a local tax law, income distribution legislation, and a national representation law, and measures designed to realize autonomy at the local level. Also, despite the autonomy, the Constitution places the local government under the general supervision of the executive. Finally, the Charter allows Congress to include in the LGC provisions for removal of local officials, which suggest that Congress may exercise removal powers, and as the existing LGC has done, delegate its exercise to the President. The petitioners are under the mistaken impression that the Constitution has left the President mere supervisory powers, which supposedly excludes the power of investigation, and denied her control, which allegedly embraces disciplinary authority. Legally, Supervision is not incompatible with disciplinary authority. Control equals the power of an officer to alter or modify or nullify or set aside what a subordinate officer had done in the performance of his duties and to substitute the judgment of the former for test of the latter. Supervision equals overseeing or the power or authority of an officer to see that subordinate officers perform their duties. As we held, however, investigating is not inconsistent with overseeing, although it is a lesser power than altering.